All right, well, enough of true confessions. Good evening. I'll call to order the special meeting workshop of the City Council for Thursday, May 28th, 2020. And our city clerk will make a Zoom broadcast announcement at this time.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Pursuant to Section 3 of Executive Order N2920, issued by Governor Newsom on March 17, 2020, the special meeting of the City Council for May 28, 2020 will be conducted telephonically through Zoom and broadcast live on the city's website. Please be advised that pursuant to Executive Order and to ensure the health and safety of the public by limiting human contact that could spread the COVID-19 virus, the council chamber will not be open to the public. Some members of council will be participating remotely and will not be physically present in the council chamber. If you would like to speak on an agenda item, please dial *67-1669-900-9128. Enter our meeting ID 833-4707-7730 and password 104915. The city wants you to know that you can also submit your comments by email to ccpubliccomment@grandterrace-ca.gov. The City of Grand Terrace thanks you in advance for taking all precautions to prevent the spreading of the COVID-19 virus.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. If you would, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam City Clerk, may we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Allen.
Present.
Councilmember Hussey.
Present.
Councilmember Robles. Mayor Pro Tem Wilson.
I'm here.
Mayor McNabo.
Present.
Madam Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Our first item of business today is a closed session. So we will recess to closed session for one item, public employee performance evaluation pursuant to section 564957.6, title City Manager. And so at this time, we are in recess. Council met in closed session to discuss one item, and so we are reconvening to open session now. Item considered during closed session was a public employee performance evaluation pursuant to section 564957.6, title City Manager. Direction was given to staff. Other than that, no reportable actions. So we will move on to public comment. Are there any requests to speak at this time?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right. So we will close public comment and move on to new business. And what we have is one item of business tonight, and that's our priority workshop for fiscal year 2020-2021. Mr. City Manager Harold Duffy.
Thank you, Mayor. For the record, G. Harold Duffy, City Manager. On June 12, 2019, the City Council conducted a workshop to provide staff direction on projects the council felt were very important for the quality of life and economic advancement of the Grand Terrace community. Staff recently presented to the council on March the 10th, 2020, an update of all of the top priority projects. And so tonight, what we'd like to do is provide the council an opportunity to give us some direction on, show the council what we accomplished in 2019, 1920, and then get some direction from the council on what they believe their priorities are at this point in time so we can move forward in 2020-21. So we'll start off with the city manager's priority projects list as approved by the Grand Terrace City Council. So the city manager's priority list includes economic development, committees and commissions, human resources, finance and senior center, and public safety. Throughout the presentation tonight, each department head will chime in on their particular projects, and we'll have the council an opportunity to ask any questions if they would like. So on economic development in the 2019-20 priority list, we had a top priority, high priority, and an item that was not as high or top, it was listed as a priority. So in the top priority, we had development of 4.78 acres on Barton Road, the Gateway Specific Plan, Taco Bell, Grocery Outlet, Surgical Center, Mr. TV Video, Kaz Ramen Coffee, Hollywood Video Conversion, Edwin Fuels Fire Station Agreement, and TOT tax implementation. Now, some of the projects here can be accomplished within 1 year or have major milestones that are going to be achieved. So this particular year, we were able to accomplish the Grocery Outlet, that's in effect, and Richardson's RV, which actually was a high priority, but it was driven by the private development, and they came in and they're in full operation at this point in time. So here's some other projects that we believe should be moved over to the top priority list. The San Bernardino County Child Care Facility, and this was our old child care facility, and we were working for a year and a half with San Bernardino County to locate there. That project kind of, because of the delay and their parking requirements, the county pulled out of that project. However, we do have an adult daycare program that wants to go into the facility, and they've submitted plans, and so that's going to be one of our high priorities as we move forward with that project. The council might be aware of the GT Pit Stop. That's right across from, in the cul-de-sac, right across from the Arco station. Since the interchange project is going to be complete, we're getting quite a few developers that are talking to the private property owner to look at trying to locate there as soon as possible. So we'll see some activity in that area. Also, just to remind the council that the council did a deal with Dr. McDuffie when he purchased his property from us on Commerce Way, that we have first rights for him to his property on La Crosse. That's on the corner of on the southwest corner of the roundabout. And so what he's supposed to do is that once that interchange project is complete, we are to work with him to get an appraisal, and we are to, if we want to, we have first rights of refusal to purchase that property. There are quite a few developers that are milling around looking at that site. As you know, that's a primary site. It can be seen from the freeway, and it's in this great access to the city. Then we also have the RDA lot 0.80 acre development, which is former redevelopment property. It's right next to where the Taco Bell is located, in between Taco Bell and actually Happy Care is right next in between the two properties. And that property is getting some play. I met with the developer last week and some potential customers, some clients that will co-locate there. Their goal is they're going to be building a center with 3 to 4 spaces for retail. And so they're trying to land their first one before they actually start building. We met on site with actually 2 businesses at the time last week. And so I believe that those priorities should be shifted over to the top priority on this list. And so this is an opportunity really for the council to, if they have any modifications to the list that they would like to see, to have this discussion at this point in time.
Councilmember Allen.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear. So at any time while we're going through this, we should just jump right in if we want to talk about what we're talking about right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
what will happen here, sir, and I'm sorry I didn't explain this. So what will happen is I'll show you what the existing category is. I'll show you, then I'll highlight what has been completed. And then I'll show you what my recommendation is for staff to move items forward. And the council can then make your determination of what you'd like to see moved or adjusted or changed.
Okay, so we'll do that section by section.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. So Councilmember Allen, did you have comments you wanted to make?
So we're on this section now then?
Yeah.
Okay. So the ones that you highlighted that you feel like the staff feels like would be good to go over here into move from high priority to top priority.
Yes.
So is that because you feel like those can be accomplished this year?
Well, what's going to happen is those are driven by private developers. And so much like we know, for example, much like we had Richardson's RV as a high priority, but because the developer came in, bought the property, moved things forward, it became a top priority without us having to get behind it. And so what we're saying is that now that the interchange project is complete, the GT Pit Stop and the La Crosse development, the developers that are eager to move those projects forward. So for a significant item for me would be a developer comes in and says, I want to do a project here. And that's how that works.
Okay, thanks.
On the La Crosse development, even though we have first right of refusal to purchase it, does that mean we have to? Or if we found a developer that wanted to do a project there, that we could have them work with Dr. McDuffie?
Absolutely. And so what will happen is, what we will be doing is our agreement with Dr. McDuffie is that the property has to be appraised and he can sell it, or we can, if we have a developer we're working with, we can work with the developer to acquire the property.
Okay. But we wouldn't have to put any cash in?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have comments or questions on this item? Do you have comments or questions, Mayor Pro Tem?
No, I don't, not at this point.
Okay. Councilmember Robles? Okay. Councilmember Hussey? Okay.
Committees and commissions. The top priorities will return to the city council with options to delegate Recreation and Youth Commission, Park and Recreation and Youth Commission, and then return to the city council with options for delegate special events for support for special events. So we only had 2 items listed there as top priorities. So we were able to come back to the council, and we did have a resolution where the council gave us direction to do a youth in government, I think it was a week. And we started that process with working with the high schools, but COVID-19 kind of stopped us with that. So we'll be working with the high school again, so we can start fresh in the new school year.
Councilmember Allen?
I think I can,
Oh, wait. Mayor Pro Tem and then Councilmember Allen.
I think I could see that pushed back to a C priority given the circumstances.
Okay, so he's saying he could see it pushed back in priority because of the circumstances. Councilmember Allen?
Yes, I was just going to suggest, I remember that I sort of initiated that whole thing with youth in government. And I know that later on that may come up again tonight, but I agree with Mayor Pro Tem about how the priority on that, because of the current situation with COVID-19, may not be quite so high. But you know, one of the things that we also did was, I believe, we approved to have a member of the community, a youth from the community, be on the Parks and Rec Commission
Yes.
as a sitting member.
Absolutely,
Also.
sir.
Mayor,
Councilmember Robles?
actually, this has been something that I initiated before you got on the council.
Probably so, because it's something that should have been done for forever and ever.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, since we can't quite get to this, maybe we should push it back.
Yes.
And be happy with the Parks Commission thing. I mean, it's, would be very nice, but we're limited in staff and we're in an extraordinary situation.
Okay, we can move that to a high priority, and for example, if we move to a high priority, and then if there's a movement by the school district to be able to do that, then they could drive that factor for us.
Well, I think we're saying let's take it off a high priority, isn't that what we're saying?
I think Mayor Pro Tem was suggesting just the priority,
Okay,
item C.
move it over to C,
So
okay.
it's
All
there,
right.
it's a placeholder,
Okay.
it's a priority, but it's not,
Okay.
it's not something that's actively worked on at this
Okay,
time.
excellent. And then we have the one at the bottom, return to the council with options to delegate special event support. And that was talked about in the very beginning of the year. when we started this process. And the thought at the time was we would get someone to assist us. Now, I don't think that's going to be a viable option, so
that's
we'll push
kind of-
that too.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Next, we have human resources. Under top priority, we had benefits and recognition programs, annual evaluations and merit increase reinstated, employee appreciation programs, and then we also had a high priority for annual events for employees, council and city staff social events, review of health and compensation. So you'll see that these are highlighted. Those are actual items that we actually did accomplish this year. And then this is up to the council if they want to adjust any of those priorities. I can go back and show you those if you wanted me to leave those up there.
So you have review of health compensation, and you said that we completed it, but then it's on the next slide.
I'm sorry. Review of the health and compensation is one that I want to see if you want to move that over or leave it as it is.
All right. I don't know that there's a lot of resources available for the annual events and the staff city council and staff social events can still be
Yeah, absolutely.
a Thursday afternoon as you were having them.
Yeah.
And I don't think that takes a lot. I think employee appreciation program is probably more needed now than it probably was. It was needed before, but I think it's really needed now. Those would just be my comments. I would say annual events. Well, what kind of annual event?
Well, I think that we had, one year we had an annual picnic. Well, we had a picnic.
Oh, okay.
And then one year, so for example, this past year, we had holiday dinner up in the conference room. I think Councilperson Robles, you were there. Mary, I think you provided some dessert for that event. And Councilman Allen, you were there. And so just things like that.
Okay, so they're not major
No,
events.
no.
They're probably very good for morale if
Yeah.
they continue.
Absolutely. Okay. And I think that, for example, under the review of health and compensation, we have a consultant that we work, Keenan, that does our kind of our health broker, and they always give us kind of the latest information that's available. So, I mean, it's a high priority, but it's not much staff effort involved in that. Okay? Next, we have Finance and Senior Center, review of business license fees, housing agency programs, increase in senior center services, high priority is Finance Department staff reorganization, review of cost-effective health benefits. It's there again. I do want to say that under, so we did have an increase in senior center services. The council provided additional revenue for the bus driver. So we extended the number of hours there. And I believe we also extended maybe the number of hours for the FSA coordinator as part of our program. I think we used more CDBG funding to do that. One of the things, too, that we did under the housing agency programs, we did come back to the council and provide an overview of different programs. We did not come back, we were supposed to come back and provide you with a meeting just on housing programs that are available for the council to implement. So we have a housing successor agency. Our goal was, and we have like about $1.2 million in funds to be able to do programs. And right now, I believe our community development director has an RFP out for someone to come in and share those programs and actually administer those programs based on which programs the council would select. So we plan on coming back to the council within the next 3 months to share with you the different kind of programs that are out there and that you can decide what you'd like to do with that $1.2 million.
Okay, Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, Mr. Duffy, I want to ask you, secondly, I'm going to ask you about the status of the electric bus. But the first thing I want to ask you about is you said an increase in senior center services and how we did recently appropriate more money so that the bus driver we'd have more bus driver services. But in light of the current situation, what's going on with the coronavirus, is that bus driver being utilized as much as we anticipated by appropriating that money now still? I mean, are those trips being made? And I mean, you know, with what's being shut down and the restrictions and all?
Yeah, and actually, sir, what's happening is that the bus driver's actually making more trips. And they're making more trips because of social distancing, where, she has a capacity of 14 people in the bus, but she can only take 3 or 4, sitting in every other space. And so, and there is a constant demand for early morning trips to the various stores here in town.
Oh, okay, thank you for that.
Councilmember Robles.
I had failed to mention in my council comments, I took DeBerry to avoid Barton to go to Stater Brothers, and there was a very elderly, disabled gentleman walking with his groceries on the hook. And I wanted to stop, but I couldn't. I mean, I can't lift anybody, and my car is not appropriate to put anybody in. And I saw some, so I just, and I know we're a small city, but there were some communities that maybe we can have a week where we institute, where people put in their windows if they needed help, or neighbors, and just to try to bring to the surface maybe some of these individuals that were missing. It just broke my heart. If I could have picked them up, I would have.
In what way did we make it known that we had the bus service to those that don't live in the senior villas?
They have a newsletter that they generate and that they mail out, but, that's limited. And so what we can most likely do, I know that seniors still read a newspaper. They really gravitate to that. We also advertise or promote the program on AM 1640, but we certainly can send a separate postcard or a piece of mail out as an activity, because I think you're right. There are a number of seniors that are not accessing the service, and they really could. Because if that gentleman was on his own, what we could have done was, if he knew about the bus service, we actually do point-to-point pickup. We would have gone to his house, taken him to the market, and then dropped him back off. So absolutely.
We used to, do things with the utility building, Burtech or some, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe the water bill people can help us out with something that a shut-in would see their bill.
We can certainly do that. We'll make sure that the utility bill, we still have access to that, to the water bill, not to water bill, but to the trash bill. We can certainly do that.
Further comments? Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, I was just going to say, there's a lot less traffic out on the street at this point. So it may be a bit of a casualty in the fact that I know I don't go out. I go out maybe once a week, unless I'm going, out of the city. So it may be a little bit of a casualty that direction. So I guess notices about all that we can hope for, and if they elect not to use it, then we've given it a good college try.
Yeah, well, he could hardly walk.
Yeah.
And
So whatever.
All right. Please continue.
City council modifications. This was on finance, and we have, Ms. Fortune, are you with us?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay. So why don't you go ahead and talk about the business license fee, the review of the business license fees, and some of the challenges we faced in that?
Well, as City Council is aware, we actually, with our current business license consultant, we had quite a few of unhappy business license holders. So we did send that out to bid. We did award the contract to HDL, and at this time we're going through that transition. Now, the review of the business license fee itself, as City Council aware, this is considered a tax. If the need be, I will have our new consultant, once transition is over, take a look at that, take a look at other fees imposed by the cities around us, and see what it would take for a full cost recovery to actually cover the cost of us providing business license certificates to local businesses, and also those from outside.
And so, Ms. Fortune, is it safe to say that regardless of the size of business in the community, the maximum business license they pay is it $1,200?
That is correct.
It's based on revenue.
Yeah, but there's a cap on it, yeah.
Correct, if that's what you mean by size.
Yes,
If you mean revenue.
revenue, I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and and I think we heard your comments about doing a better, trying to do more outreach and try to get more people to be able to access the bus. So was there anything else the council would like to add in that particular area? Okay, moving on to public safety, and this was part of the discussion that the council had the other evening. And so I listed all of the items that were in the contract, enforcement of state statutes, enforcement of city ordinances, traffic enforcement, special services, arson, homicide, and narcotics enforcement, attendance at commissions and board meetings. And kind of basically, they're all in our top priority. And the question becomes, I think the council wanted to have a discussion about what is your real priority.
I think so too, but I also think part of the discussion needs to be, what do we do with holidays that involve fireworks? For the most part, fireworks are illegal every single day of the year, but the one day of the year that they are legal, there are a lot of illegal fireworks. And that seems to be something that is it's a high priority to our residents. So,
Okay.
I think we need to have the discussion with respect to what the council's priority are with the services provided in schedule or in our contract.
Okay.
But then I think we also need to talk about what can be done about fireworks.
Okay, and so during the course of the year, there's certain events that happen. We know that the start of school creates traffic-related issues. We know that time of day also creates some traffic-related issues. We know that weekends can create some traffic-related issues. And we have the special events that create traffic, that create hazard, public life, health and safety issues. And so I think your discussion tonight is you wanted to have that discussion with the Sheriff's Department in terms of activity. Now, I do have some other data that kind of just shows where we are, where we've been historically on different types of crimes in the city. There's the charts following this, but I think that you wanted to have a different discussion in terms of with the resources that you have, and the contract is a open book for all the services. How do you direct or let the sheriff know what your preferences are in terms of priorities?
Yeah. All right. Did you want to have a couple of minutes to talk, and then we'll have council members?
There we go. Good evening, City Council and Mayor. As you know, the current contract and the staffing levels pretty much gives you from 3 o'clock until about 1 o'clock in the morning every morning, 2 deputies. And 7 days a week, again, their priorities are going to be those calls for service that come in from the community. That said, in between calls and other investigations that they may be completing, they are open to other proactive efforts. And that's where really the city has the ability to direct me with those priorities that you may have and what those may be. Specifically with the fireworks, it's something that the station is discussing as it affects other areas within the county as well. And we serve Loma Linda and a lot of county pockets within our jurisdiction. We anticipate staffing through some sort of an agreement with the city for at least one deputy sheriff to work on July 4th, hours to be determined. And be talking with Chief Mejia about the possibility of teaming up with one of their fire prevention officers to work together to combat some of these issues that come up on the 4th. I believe that's what we have done in the past. I'd have to go back and look historically as to what those records might show. However, we are open and available for whatever the city determines you'd like us to do.
Okay. Councilmember Robles, Mayor Pro Tem, and then Councilmember Hussey.
Yeah, I was going to say, first of all, I think we council members have to stick to a protocol, that individuals cannot be calling the sheriff as in our roles and directing what we think should be a priority. I know we had this conversation before, and the city manager said that you're the manager of this contract, and we need to respect that, and we need to go through you. So we can, so I'm going to say what my priority is of course, we have limited resources. I wish we had more. I'll have to be sensitive to the constraints of our sheriff's contract, but I would like to see that we try to do, the enforcement when school starts and do the educational component. I'd like to see an educational component with the 4th of July that they, again, using social media, mail outs of utility, this is how you do a citizen's arrest. Because there seems to be a lot of expectation that you can source a firework, after it's happened and you've been called. Other than that, I would like to see, in a venue like this, you tell us what you can do, and we go from there.
Well, we can do a lot, and I'm really not sure exactly where I should start with that, because I believe that the folks that we have out there every day are trying to do their very best to provide the highest level of service that they can, and a lot of that service encompasses a lot of different facets, a lot of different areas within crimes and offenses that may be committed. So I guess maybe to clarify my statement about, what priorities you may have for us specifically, we want to be mindful and aware and partner with the city in what you feel is important, in addition to what we already do out there. And every city has different priorities. Every contract that we have asks us for specific things, and if it's within our purview and capability to do, we'll certainly make every effort to do that and focus our efforts when we have the opportunities to do in those areas. So I think to that I may be unsure specifically as to what you had mentioned and what you would like to hear from me.
Well, I guess if the better thing is, I know there's always been a desire for more traffic enforcement, and we don't have a traffic cop.
Sure.
So if you could explain that
Okay.
to us.
So merely having a traffic designated officer means that his priority is going to be enforcing those traffic rules. And with anything else, of course, they would be subject to emergency calls for service. Once those are accomplished, then again, they're back to that priority of enforcing traffic. Not having a traffic officer means is that the two officers or the one officer that we have working at any given time is more than likely going to be tasked with other things, other calls for service, other emergencies that may be occurring. And when they have the opportunity, they're not supposed to be just sitting in a parking lot somewhere, waiting for the next call to come in. We expect them to be working proactively within the community, and they do so with traffic stops. They do so with pedestrian checks. They do so with business checks and security checks, and really do their best to be as visible as they possibly can within the community, and make those enforcement efforts as effective as possible as they see things occur. So while a traffic officer might have that first priority of traffic, it would be the other officers that you currently have on your Schedule A, where traffic would be a secondary priority for them, as they have the ability and opportunity.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I think we might be catering to a situation that puts us in some jeopardy here when we discuss priorities. You guys' priority, from what I understand, is the Sheriff Department, is to provide police activities for everything. And I know common sense says that's not really possible, but in the overall, our ABCD list, and including meeting attendance at the bottom, is not a priority. There's not state statutes, city ordinances, the traffic, detective, juvenile, and then meeting attendance. That's not a list of priorities. There's nowhere in the actual contract that specifies that. And to actually just to the opposite, your section 6, basically says you guys are the guys, you're the experts, and I don't dispute that. I'm certainly not an expert in relation to police activities. My predilection would be to go over there and knock on a guy's door and knock him on his tail end if he does something wrong. So I wouldn't want me to be that person. But I don't want the city to take on the responsibility of trying to prioritize you. Because as we've already pointed out, well, there are times when we take advantage of a very serious importance in your service capability, and that is you can lump 10 people onto one property if it requires it, and you have, and I've seen it, and we've seen several situations where we have some serious business going on, and you've gotten the support of surrounding agencies as well as your own. One thing I would like to know is, what are we not supplying you in order to be able to make your job not only more efficient, but also able to cover, larger expanses, so to speak. I mean, it's a small town, so there's got to be something. And one of the things I thought about is that are we fully aware as a city, and have we made the Sheriff's Department fully aware of what all our speed zones are and all the stop capabilities and so on, so that, trying to trace some of these traffic folks might be a little bit simpler for you rather than trying to guess what's going on in this city?
Well, I believe, sir, that, and I don't have a list in front of me of the city and how it's laid out with all the speed zones. From what I've seen driving through, it appears to me that all the roads are pretty clearly marked. The Sheriff's Department doesn't have any part in establishing those speed zones, and I know that there's been discussions about having speed surveys done in areas of the city, and as those zones are identified or changed or reposted, of course, those become areas that we're going to concentrate in and make sure that those are actually being followed. In terms of what the city can do to help us, I think we just clearly have to look at where we are on the contract, and I'm not here to discuss contractual issues. I'm not part of that negotiation. But as I look at it, I believe what we see on there is a minimum staffing level contract, which means we probably can't do much to go any lower than what we have. And fully understand the budgetary restraints and situations of cities, It's not my place to make any other recommendations or tell you what I think you should do. But to make our jobs easier, of course, having additional personnel does just that, because we can have the people focused on conducting investigations for the reports that they take. We could have traffic officers in the city refocusing and really prioritizing the issues in several parts of the city as opposed to just perhaps one. So yeah, more people makes the jobs a lot easier. I believe that we are providing a very, very high quality level of service, but in terms of the level of personnel that we have conducting those tasks and doing that work, there may be room in the future for those discussions to see what can be done. But that just right off the bat comes to mind as probably being the first and foremost thing that would make all of our lives probably just a little bit easier.
I understand, and I appreciate your comments. I believe that some of the things that are itemized, I'm looking at almost a full page of itemization in your Schedule A for the total of $2,207,992. Obviously, that since this is a contract extension, it means that all of the thought pattern beforehand happened back in 1994. And since then, there have been change conditions and so on. And because of our relationship with the Sheriff's Department, it has been up to the Sheriff's Department to recommend how it will do its own job. So I think it is probably a little bit past this discussion. It's just I want to get out of the realm of the understanding that the city has any control over how you keep the peace and how you provide your service, because technically we don't. And I just want to try to provide you with the tools that we can provide, that we would provide to anybody in your position that might increase our service level.
Are you gonna do a special tax?
I'm sorry?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think Mr. Duffy had a comment, and then Councilmember Hussey, and then Councilmember Allen.
Yes. So one of the things that is often said to me when I relay a message to the Sheriff's Department, and I think it's probably very true, did the people call in? Did they call in to dispatch? Did they call in the non-emergency number? So often what happens, people have a problem in the city and they post it online, but they don't call the Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department is very much data-driven. And so when they see these calls coming in on certain issues, first thing they've told me for the last 5 years is, well, we didn't have any calls. We had no calls. For example, with this whole issue with the fireworks, I had Lieutenant Lane look at the information, and he said, yeah, over the weekend, I think we received maybe 6 calls about fireworks. But there are a lot more people complaining about the fireworks. And so we really need to get, for example, when those calls come in and people give their addresses, that data can be used to pinpoint where the activity is occurring. So it's much easier to try to combat that, but people have to call that non-emergency sheriff number. So maybe what we need to do too is, as part of public education, is keep putting that out there so we can get the data to them so they can respond because of the frequency and the number of calls that are coming in.
Yeah, Councilmember Hussey, I want you to have your turn. I just want to remind you that we had somebody email in comments regarding this, and she indicated that everybody knows who the parties are. So perhaps staff could follow up with her and get some information so that staff and so that the sheriff knows who those people are, because it sounds like this person that sent in an email knows who the offenders are, at least in her neighborhood.
Well, Mayor, if I could, it's also very important too, if Lieutenant Lane can share with you how we respond to a fireworks call and what's actually needed to be able to make something happen.
No, it's pretty involved.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about on Tuesday. But so here's what happens. And of the calls that the city manager mentioned that I looked up, I believe there were 8 calls since January of this year, fireworks calls. And as I looked at them, I believe of the 8, 6 were people that wished to remain anonymous. So we would get a phone number perhaps. And in our computer systems now have the ability of retrieving most cell phone numbers when they call in. However, if it's the person's desire to remain anonymous, it means they don't want to talk to us when we get there, and might be very reluctant in doing so. So they might very well have all of the information that we would need. Getting that information from them and actually directing us further is really what we need to do. And you know, I want to thank the city manager for bringing that up. And you know, those are to the Mayor Pro Tem's question about what can we do as an extension of what the city council can do. I guess the residents, what they can do would be when those things happen, if it's raising an alarm with them and it feels it's something that they need to let us know about, then we absolutely need their help when we get there. We're not always right there when things happen. We don't always hear them. We don't always see them. So we rely on that information to conduct those investigations. So that would be hugely beneficial. And that's just not fireworks calls. That's many, many other calls that we end up going to on a regular basis. And it's anybody's ability and desire to remain anonymous. There's really not much we can do to force them to talk to us. So we end up sort of stalemated at times as we try to deal with these issues that we know are impactful to the communities, but yet we just don't have the tools that we need, you know, on hand at that moment to be able to do that.
Thank you. Councilmember Hussey.
This question is for Mr. Duffy. Last year, we had a meeting with an assembly member. We did that workshop on the funds and stuff, and one of the things that was approved during that with the council was the Neighborhood Watch signage program. And the assembly member Reyes said, you know, her office was looking if we brought it up to this year's budget. I don't know if it's changed since the COVID-19. I don't see it on a priority thing. I mean, far as, are we going to still pursue this to get with her office to try to get the funds for the signage and revitalize, help our city with the Neighborhood Watch? Because I know the Neighborhood Watch, you know, we need it. And I know Mr. Allen's always wanted to do the Citizens Patrol thing, bring that back. So I don't see this as a priority. Or I think the budget, we had to have everything in by July, if I'm right, if I remember right, for the state's request for those grants.
Yeah, so what we did was we included that request as part of our legislative packet, and we sent that to Assemblyperson Reyes back in December, if not November. And as they were developing the budget, her staff did call and ask questions about the material. And so I can check in with them to see if it was included in the budget, but it was the entire packet that you had requested, that the council had approved, in terms of, we sent one of our legislative priorities was to have Neighborhood Watch program with signs and also some additional support. So that was submitted to Assemblyperson Reyes. I can do a follow-up. And I believe, sir, if it's not on this list, it is going to show up here. I think I know it does. It shows up on one of the charts. So.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know, if it was be on this list or next list. So, because I know it's a good program, and it also helps, you know, like when with a firework issue and something, you will have people that, you know, they want to be anonymous. You know, they want to, you know, make sure they take care of their neighborhoods and stuff. So I just wanted to know what the follow-up on that was and the status. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Allen.
Thanks, Mayor. So Councilmember Hussey touched on what I wanted to ask you about, is if this is the place where the COPs need to be. Is this the chart where they should be? Because the COPs should I believe they, you know, we could better utilize them if we had more of them in our city. We could, especially on fireworks, you know, they could go out and observe for fireworks. I received an email from a resident about complaining about the fireworks recently, and one of the, probably y'all did too, and one of the items that the resident mentioned in there was they compared our city with, I think it was Hesperia, and what Hesperia does. And one of the things Hesperia does in this message was, according to this message, was they offer reward money, reporting reward money for residents who, you know, will report illegal fireworks or,
That lead
so-
to the arrest?
I suppose, yeah. I think that would be important, and I don't know the details of it, but I just thought I'd throw that out there. I don't know if those of you who are wanting to, you know, Councilmember Hussey mentioned how some residents are apprehensive, and even the sheriff mentioned how some residents are apprehensive, they want to remain anonymous. Maybe this might be an incentive to help them. I don't know, you know. I'm just putting that out there, what a resident sent me.
Thank you. Councilmember Robles?
Yeah, on this law enforcement services contract, you know, it's kind of a bit aggravating that over the years, we hear that this says you have to provide everything, and when there's a crisis, you provide everything, and so we don't have to give you any more money because you're bound to give us everything. And then another meeting, we hear you're not doing enough traffic enforcement. Then we hear this meeting, we shouldn't ask you to do any more traffic enforcement. So this is what I'm going to end with. We need to adhere to a protocol that the city manager manages the relationship. I'm just here saying what would be nice to have, what we hear as 1/20th of elected official body that people would like to see, and that's just good government relations. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Thank you.
All right, here's my question. How many deputies do we have to have in the city of Grand Terrace for crime to go to zero?
I'm not sure there's a definition for that.
Okay, just thought I'd put that out there.
I appreciate that.
As far as citizens on patrol, I know that there are a number of people that wish we had more, and this isn't a shot at my colleague at all. People want there to be more, but they don't want to be part of being more. And so I'm not sure if there's a way that the sheriff's department has any kind of a campaign that we could use, in a public service campaign, that we could put some information out there about what it is, how much time is required, what kind of training they receive. You know, just something that maybe we could help in that way, spread the word that, you know, it's needed, it still exists. There are people that believe that we don't have citizens on patrol. And I see them when they come out and they do things for our events. So I know that they're there. I know that volunteerism across the board is not as strong as it used to be. But
Yeah, you're right.
if there are any public service announcements that you have for those types of things that we could maybe have on our city channels and any kind of other informational that we put out, I think that would be great. And I think that in some ways supports what Councilmember Allen is saying about it would be great to have more. Same with, I don't know if you have any, again, public service announcements about Neighborhood Watch, but to me, that's the big part of Neighborhood Watch. It's not so much having the signs and the other information and hardware, but it's having the residents who don't believe that they are going to get themselves in trouble by being able to talk to their neighbors, or that their neighbors aren't going to be so nosy and into all of their business. You know, I've heard people push back on being part of a Neighborhood Watch because, well, you know, I don't want my neighbors thinking that my business is their business. And I know that that's not Neighborhood Watch necessarily either. So if there's any communication information
Sure.
that exists within the sheriff's department, I think that might be helpful for us to be able to send out.
Well, you know, we do, and historically, I would imagine that some of those materials may be here. I don't know if I've seen them handy, but those documents do exist. They're in the form of pamphlets and flyers. I believe we just approved a new flyer for your website, advertising for COPs.
Nice.
So that may be up there now. But that went through a revision and a approval process with us, and I believe that was just handed back to the city within maybe the last couple weeks. So maybe that's going to be showing itself soon. But you're right, volunteerism is down across the board. We used to happily advertise, over 500,000 hours donated to the department every year by volunteers. And not just COPs, but explorers and search and rescue and reserves. But those numbers are way down. We're averaging probably 1,800, per month. So let me rephrase that. We're down to about probably 300,000 hours now, annually. So it's down across the board. I believe there are 3 or maybe 5 COPs assigned to Grand Terrace. We can certainly get those materials into the right places so that we can get that public service announcements out there and see what we can do to drive up, their assistance. We cannot do, as a sheriff's department, we cannot perform the job that we do to the level that we do without the volunteers. Right. And we have suffered through this whole crisis without having the volunteers with us. So to that, I believe it's probably within the next week or 2 that we'll start getting the volunteers back out into the streets, and the COPs will now be able to come back out and resume their patrols. To Councilwoman Robles' point, it's eyes and ears. It's having those folks out there that are just not necessarily, ready and willing to tattletale on everybody, but it's seeing things that that might raise alarm or concern, and certainly things that are out of place or just flat out illegal, and they're going to pass that information on to us so that we can do whatever enforcement or intervention that we need to. So we need those folks just as much as you do, and we would be happy to see what we can do to drive those numbers up.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? All right, thank you. Mr. Duffy,
Okay.
please continue.
Mayor, I would like to just appoint the council to packet page. I'm trying to find. Packet page 50. On item number 16. One of the things that we have in the packet, pardon? You want to, so in this packet page 50, it's a report backlog. So the report backlog is what we used to provide the council before we came up with the priorities workshop list. And so in packet, but we kept the report backlog because it started before the priorities started. But in the report backlog, there is item number 16. And that's what Councilmember Hussey was referencing. And so one of the things we want to do today is, my goal would be is to take whatever the council's priorities are, put them on the one priority list, and eliminate the report backlog, merge it all together, so it's not 2 separate lists. And so I knew that this item was in the packet, so here's where it is. And so if it's something that we've been working on this, and we kind of give a detail here. It was bring back in November for the City Council legislative update. We did just that, and we sent it over to Senator Reyes. Her staff did call in January, so they were looking at that material. I'll do a follow-up with her to see, with them to see if there was any inclusion in the budget for this, in the state budget this year.
Okay.
But certainly we can move that item up to, in the priorities as part of a report back and follow-up.
You probably want to change your chart. You have A, B, and A priorities.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was modifying that chart, so I'll fix it.
So that would be in the placeholder priority right now, or just until you find back from Assemblymember Reyes? Or?
I'll bring it back,
Okay.
I'll put it on the priority list, and I'll bring it back to the council. So all the comments that we have today is we'll bring it all back to the council, and for you guys to confirm if we actually captured what you wanted, and we can make some final adjustments.
I was just wondering, reading this, if this was going in this proposed budget and the move was to take everything out that wasn't a baseline budget, we may want to discuss what we can do if this isn't funded.
Okay, absolutely. We'll make a note of that. Okay, jumping back to the public safety. So this is actually data from the sheriff's 2019 annual report. I'll send this information out I'll send the report out to the council tonight. I'll also post the report on the website. I think we received this maybe 2 weeks ago, the actual annual report for the sheriff's department. So it's online, it's online, but I have an online version of it. I'll make sure that we get that out to the council. But this is kind of the data from 2015 to 2019. He also provides information for a percentage change from 2015 to 19, and then the change from last year to 18 to 18, 19. And so you'll see over the last 5 years, from 2015 to 2008, there was one murder, and then in 2019 there was one also. Manslaughter, 0. The rape issue has increased dramatically by percentage. Aggravated assault information, simple assault, and Lieutenant Lane can actually share with us what the difference is between, part 1 and a part 2 crime. We do see the burglary issue here, and it had increased, but it has gone down also from 2015, 26% down from that point. But it is at 2019, it was 55. Larceny, what is GTA, Lieutenant Lane? Grand Theft Auto? Okay, that's actually gone down, and then no difference between 1 year to the next. And then there's part 1 crimes and part 2 crimes. Can you tell us the difference between the part 1 and part 2 crimes?
I didn't bring my package of notes because I have actually broken down and done some analysis on some of this. So I apologize if I'm going to try to pull some of these numbers out of my fading memory, but the difference between part 1 and part 2 crimes is really just a position of uniform crime reporting that we have to report to DOJ. All of these things are tracked through statistics. So simple assault would be just a simple battery, which is, somebody gets punched in the face or slapped or something like that. Aggravated assault would be something a little bit more serious. Maybe there's some significant injury or there was a weapon involved. So there's a big difference there in the severity of the crime. And a lot of it is really dependent on how the crimes are ultimately reported. There may be sort of fine lines between some definitions.
So there is some reduction too in crime from 2018 to 19?
I'm sorry, sir?
There seems to be a total reduction in part 1, part 2 crimes, 8% from.
Yeah, we're seeing across the county for the year that a lot of these crimes are down sort of across the board. There are some things, and I don't know what other slides you have, but some of those have to do with changes that are made from year to year in what the reporting requirements are. So they may be reported as one thing one year, and then there's a change made, so they get reported a little bit differently the following year. And one of those is a difference where like terrorist threats or criminal threats was reported one way last year and it's now reported a different way. So we see some changes in some of the numbers from year to year with regards to that. But yeah, just as a general rule, I think we're seeing a fairly consistent downturn in most areas.
Great. Thank you. And so now we're on to the city clerk priorities list.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. So our top priority list was FPPC compliance, which was basically including your FPPC documentation on our website and through Laserfish, which would allow for more transparency, although some information is redacted. Increasing content on the intranet, which is the internal system of the website for our employees and council members as well. So that information has been updated with manuals, directories. Actually, your priority project lists are now uploaded on that, so you can see that at any time. And that's anytime updates have been made, that's been included, updated weekly. The telephone system improvements is one of your priorities as well, and that system, excuse me, has been completed as far as our looping, making sure that we have your telephone calls are answered by somebody. There's always somebody going to answer that phone, and I know that was a big complaint, so we have it set up where it goes to several different locations to ensure that there's a live person that individuals can speak with. The technology program for your tablet use, you all have your Microsoft Surface Pros. That has been completed as well. Research the use of Facebook Live and Twitter. That's something that I've still been reviewing with other cities and how they're handling that. And that's going to be brought back to you in June, probably at the latter part of the month for discussion. The city adopted budgets and agenda packets placed in the library. That has been completed. Developing the community posting board. The community posting board that has been developed is outside here based on state law to allow for members of the public to access information 24 hours a day. And it was my understanding that there was another posting board that would like to be placed at another location. That has not been completed, and we'll look into that. Managing city and neighborhood recognition program. That's not completed yet. Actually, working with the Planning and Development Services Division to help come up with the program itself and the definition and the guidelines. And once that's been put into place, the city clerk's office will work with coordinating those recognitions annually or quarterly based on whatever the council would like. Managing the annual acknowledgement program. We wanted to do that in the spring, just once a year, but as we all know, COVID has prevented that from happening. So the goal is next year, spring, we'll recognize all of our volunteers and residents who help us with many activities in the city. City council agenda modifications, that's been completed. The high priority list, the secondary list is scanning. That actually is an ongoing task that once your resolutions, ordinances, agendas, minutes, things like that that have been completed, those are uploaded pretty much within a week or two after they've been finalized. The records destruction needs to be completed. That is not done yet, but with that, the retention schedule definitely needs to be reviewed and updated to allow for more destruction of a lot of the records that we do have, because we are so many records we want to get into the electronic database. City Clerk's Department Operations Manual, that was a manual that we created for the office specialist to assist the City Clerk Department as well as City Manager. So anybody who when that day comes that we can have that individual come back, they can step into that and have that manual and get them up and running right away. Increase awareness of online public material. Actually, a slide is on Channel 3 as well as posted out here and on our website, just showing people where they can go on the website to be able to find that information. The increase in participation in city council meeting invocations, our list has grown quite a bit, and I think that that's been successful as far as, and that I've checked that one off. Lighting in the city council chambers, as funding becomes available, that's something we'll have to address a little later. We have actually done some smaller ones in the back here that have lit up the big back wall to bring some light on the former council members, and so we've worked on that. And City Hall information kiosks, and actually I had the help of maintenance on that, that's why I'm saying we. City Hall information kiosks, updating the information in all of our little various locations to provide information as it becomes available to the public from other agencies. And City Council chamber reception area upgrade, again, as revenue sources make themselves available, we'll address it at that time.
I have a question about the annual acknowledgement program. I know we can't bring our volunteers in to thank them. Can we send them a thank you?
Of course.
You know, and that could be something that's signed by the entire council saying, you know, we can't bring you in to thank you, but we want to make sure that you know you're appreciated.
Of course. We will take care of that right away.
That way we're not just putting it off and they don't think they're forgotten.
Okay.
Because I know that all the council members do appreciate that. Questions? Councilmember Robles.
On your interaction on the Facebook participation, have they discussed, because in some training I went to, there was some discussion that we can do it, but I'm just thinking, what, this code, you have to have in your code of conduct of your meeting some kind of limits, I guess. So, I mean, because you do Facebook all night, so it's a queue, from what I remember, that there's a protocol of a queue that comes in, and there, you know, and how extensive. I think it's a good idea, and it's just.
It is, I just looking at all the pros and cons of it, with the audio videographer that we have here and the different types of additional equipment that we will need. So I'm just really vetting that right now.
Okay.
But once that's been completed, we'll bring it back just for you to make that decision.
Mayor Pro Tem, did you have comments? No, okay, thank you.
Is there any other items that you are aware of that you want to add to this list, or move any of the remaining items that are on there around in any way?
Do we have money for an upgrade?
We can certainly move those over right now, because that's what we're, for any of the things that really need funding, a significant amount of funding, that's going to have to wait until those
So that-
resources are made available.
So they would just be in the holding pattern.
Yes.
What about the records destruction? Is that more of a long-term project?
It will be, I want to look to see if maybe there, I don't know if it's possible, but in conversations with other departments and other city clerks, there could be some grant money that might be able to help with the destruction costs of being able to have a service come in and do that. But that's something that I'm researching right now.
Okay, and the scanning, is there a way to look at grants for that as well, for assistance? Since it ends up being a transparency issue at some point.
I can certainly check into that,
Okay.
because that would, if we could bring another service to help us with that, we just basically take that disk and just put it into the system, and it puts it where it needs to be. So I'll look into that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Oh, Mayor Pro Tem.
I might mention, if I sound like I'm a little bit distracted, there's upwards of 50 high vehicles decorated in high school colors, running out Observation Drive, honking their horns and kids hanging out of cars. So I think that might be the graduation celebration.
Right, and they're wondering why the council isn't out there waving to them.
When are the fireworks?
This is the Public Works Priority Projects list. And this is the Highway Safety Improvement Program, one of the top priorities on Mount Vernon, Fitness Park Canopy, Preston Signal Upgrade, Commerce Way Expansion, Mount Vernon Slope Stabilization, EV Charging Station, Year 3 of the CIP, fee study, Barton Interchange Maintenance Agreement, Barton Speed Feedback, Development Plans, Fire Station Roof Repair. And then the high priority was the HIS Cycle 9, which is the guardrails, and small cell site infrastructure plan, parking citywide strategy, utility pole undergrounding master plan, West Barton Road Bridge replacement project, and support for community events. And then priority C was park enhancements. So I highlight the projects that have been completed or about to be completed this year. The Highway Safety Improvement Program, we should see some construction starting on that within the next 3 weeks. The Preston Signal upgrade was actually the left turn arrow that was included. The EV charging station has been completed. Barton Interchange Maintenance Agreement has been signed, and the Barton Speed feedback sign, which is actually a part of the Highway Safety Improvement Program. We included a component of that to order that speed feedback sign as part of that project. The projects that we'd like to move over to the top priority would be the HIS Cycle 9, parking citywide strategy, and support for community events. That's probably that shouldn't move forward. And so if there's any others that the council would like to move forward.
Where's the guardrail project? I thought there was one done on like Vista Grande.
Yeah, the guardrail project actually is in multiple locations throughout the city. Mr. French, are you on the line?
Yes, sir, I am.
Can you give us some indication on where those guardrails are going to be placed throughout the city?
Yes, sir. There are guardrails on the east end of Barton before going into Colton that will be upgraded, as well as the mayor had said, along Vista Grande. And there's also some on Vivienda on the northwest part of the city. And I think there is some on Mount Vernon just before going down into Colton that will be replaced as part of that program.
So this is an opportunity for the council if they want to move or add anything to this particular list.
All right, comments, questions? And the ones highlighted will move over into priority A because they're getting,
Yes, all
they're
except,
going to be worked on this year.
right, except for this one here.
I have a question.
Councilmember Robles.
Now, support for community events, because what I recall in a lot of this paper that I've gotten, there was going to be at least the Christmas tree lighting and something else that was going to be kept.
So there's a Christmas tree, and there's also some discussion about trying to move forward with Community Day, but moving it later.
When it rains.
And there's a committee that's
There's a committee with that, and we keep moving the date because they're very active in that. I think everyone was pretty happy with last year's Community Day, and so we're trying to hold on to that particular activity. But
Yeah, I was just going to say, you need to tell me, but I don't see, I mean, if we can continue to get vendors to help sponsor them, I think we should continue to do
absolutely.
some of these things.
Absolutely. And I think so far that maybe the art show, the country fair, have those been postponed or rescheduled?
Those are postponed. They will not be going forward this year.
Okay.
And I would say for the community events, the more we have the public involved, like if we have a committee, just like with the tree lighting,
Right.
to me, that's a huge success because of all the involvement of the groups that are involved in it. You know,
Absolutely.
they know what they want to do, they know what the kids are going to like, they know what the families are going to like, and then they help bring people out. You know,
Absolutely.
And I think that's the importance of the success of it, is making sure that enough people are involved, that they're getting the word out to have people come out and participate on
So-
the day of.
Okay, so I do want to add sort of a little more detail in terms of what's remaining on the priority list. The fitness park canopy, that was one of the council's priorities for this, to shade the playground equipment. We are getting estimates on that. We're trying to piggyback on the City of Ontario's recent bid to put a canopy up, so we're checking on that right now. The cost for that will come out of the RDA bond proceeds as directed by the council. The Commerce Way expansion, we're still working on that. That's part of the larger Gateway-specific plan. We do have earmarked about $3.7 million in arterial road funding for that. It's 60% of the funds will come from SBCTA, and the 40% will come from private development and DIF fees. The Mount Vernon slope stabilization, we are still looking for, I think we're actually applying for a new grant to be able to, we think we're very competitive on this new grant for the stabilization on that. And the council, we do still have that $600,000 the council put aside in RDA bond proceeds for matching for grants in the future. I did add also year 3 and 4 of the CIP. One of the goals here is to try to do the year 3 and 4 together. It's about a total of, is it $2 million, Mr. French?
Yes, sir, 2.2 million total amount.
Can you repeat that, sir?
It was 2.2 million total amount for both projects, yes.
Okay. And so one of the things we're looking at is the state has what they call a TRIP program, Transportation Road Improvement Program. And they will they'll do bonding for multiple agencies. So we'll be able to take our Measure I proceeds and for over a 5-year period and other factors, and be able they'll advance us the money to be able to do the road improvements for those year 3 and 4 of the CIP. And we're at the level now with year 3 and 4 where we're not doing slurry seals, we're doing major rehabs of the roads now. And then we are looking at, this is a long-term project that hopefully we're going to come to a close soon, the Public Works fee study for making sure that our fees are full cost recovery. As you know, the council took 2 recent actions. They pulled out the fees out of an ordinance and made it as part of a resolution. Is that correct, Adrian? From ordinance to resolution?
That is correct.
Okay, and so the next thing is looking at the fee study and be able to come back to the council to look at what the fee study says our cost should be for full cost recovery for our public works fees. And then we have Barton Speed feedback sign. As I said, that's part of it's being acquired as part of the Mount Vernon project. There's consistent review of development plans, and the fire station roof repair is something that we are still looking at in terms of trying to use RDA proceeds. We'll come back to the council with that to be able to do that. And the longer term issue is that we are looking at from an economic development standpoint of what the rent is with the fire station.
Okay. Mayor, comments? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, can't we move the utility pole undergrounding back into a priority C? That is a long-term situation.
It is, sir, and one of the things that we are supposed to be doing is bringing back someone to develop. We have to have a plan, and so we should at least get that plan in place.
A plan to plan?
Yes, we get the plan in place, and so the milestone there would be to get the plan in place, not necessarily try to underground anything at this point in time. And that's all, I believe, Mr. French, what's the funding source for the plan? Does that require general fund, or can we use undergrounding proceeds for that?
It would require general fund.
Okay, so.
The undergrounding is only for construction.
Okay.
So we would not be allowed to use it for the plan.
So that can't be a high priority at
Right.
this time.
Okay.
Councilmember Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. So on the Commerce Way expansion, which we have shown as a top priority, so that's something that we anticipate that could be completed this year by being in a top priority. But so my question to you is going to be, on a previous slide, we saw the storm drain, Michigan Avenue storm drains upgrading. That was only a high priority, and I'm only wondering, how dependent is the Commerce Way expansion on that storm drain upgrading? And if so, if it is, do we need to move the storm drains over?
Yeah, so the important factor here is there's two things that can occur to allow something to be a top priority or a high priority. If it's an important item, it at minimum belongs as a high priority. But if there's a driving force behind it or a certain milestone that can occur, for example, the Commerce Way is going to reach a milestone where I believe it's like 90% designed. And so we believe in this year it'll be 100% designed, ready to go. Doesn't mean that we have the funding for it. We do have some funding for it, but you're absolutely right. A big component of that project is getting the storm drains in before you, as a part of the overall project. And so, but the milestone for us would be, is that one, we have completed the design and we've established all of the funding for the project. This project will most likely, if we were moving in a brisk pace, we should be able to break ground by 2022 on the expansion of Commerce Way.
Okay, so those Michigan Street or the storm drain upgrades will need to be in place before then?
Oh,
or-
absolutely.
yeah, okay.
As part of the design, it's going to be part of the Commerce Way expansion. But the storm drain, well, let me go back to that. You said, where did you see that, sir?
A previous slide, I don't know how far back.
Well, it should come up then, but the storm drain, the significant issue with the storm drain is that, first is a stormwater plan that needs to occur. And so we believe that's going to happen within this next year. We'll adopt a stormwater drainage plan. Then the actual construction of the stormwater is dependent on two things. One is the Commerce Way expansion, the Gateway-specific plan, the cost associated with that, and we are actually applying for grants to be able to capture some of that $3 million that we need for the storm drain. In addition to that, you're going to see coming up in another section, the council approved for the design of Michigan Street and Barton Road improvements. And so part of the Michigan Street plan is for this walkable community section, but you can't do that until you get the storm drains in. But we have this plan that we're actually being able to utilize as part of the grant that we're submitting for the stormwater program. So we've got the design already laid out. So it's kind of all the council's forethought of putting those designs together is going to help us hopefully achieve getting the additional funding that we need for the storm drains and to make that a walkable street.
Okay, great, thanks.
I think the storm drains are discussed throughout that second priority project update log. So when I do a search on it, it shows page 30, page 37, and page 51, storm drains are mentioned.
Okay.
I have a question.
Councilmember Robles?
On utility pole undergrounding, did I hear you say you could only use Rule 22 money for construction?
That's what Mr. French indicated, yes.
Okay, because that wasn't my experience with it. But just in case, because there was a big discussion about how limited that money is and what it can do. If it's possible, on Preston and Barton Road, there's a huge, ugly, sightly pole. And when I was administrating this in special districts, you could use it for beautification. And I mean, if that's our main thoroughfare and we have that ugly one pole, it seems like we should possibly look at that.
Okay.
Would that be part of the plan, though, the master plan that we were going to do?
Yeah, and that's why I'm putting my
Yeah.
input right now on it.
Yeah, and so one of the things that we can look at is what is the cost associated with developing the undergrounding master plan? Because if you have that plan in place, then you'll be able to access that probably $1 million or so. But without that plan, you can't really access those funds. So we'll come back and tell you what that cost will look like. I don't think it's more than, Mr. French, do you have an estimate of what that cost for that plan would be?
Yes, sir. I talked to a few consultants, and it's in the range of 20 to 30,000 for the plan, to develop the plan.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, you had your hand up.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. In addition, when I talked to the person from, I'm going to say Edison, a high-ranking official from Edison during our last year's conference, it was in relation to using the funds to gain some benefit from a loan, and as we contemplated before, and he was really specific about it. He says, you know, you can do that, and you can do undergrounding. That's why they call it the undergrounding fund. So, however it was perceived before, undergrounding and trading credits is all they really entertain nowadays for those monies.
Well, it's not gonna cost us much to bring that proposal back to you guys. And so we can have that discussion at the time, because, you know, it may be advantageous for us to have that plan in place in case something comes up where we do need to be able to move quickly on that.
Well, I think if we have a plan, and again, it really does depend on how much of a stretch it is to get it, but when we have developers come in and they have a portion that perhaps would be at their expense to underground, and we could give towards that and have more of an undergrounding project happen in a partnership with a developer because we're ready to go, I think that's advantageous.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's certain criteria that you have to meet in order to use those funds in certain areas, but it would be good for us to have all of that laid out for us as part of a plan, so the council can then look at that from that point. Okay. And so, is there something the council would like to, I'm sorry, the West Barton Bridge replacement project, that should move over. That should be, the design for that should be completed by this time next year. And Colton's taking the lead for that project, but it's not a bridge replacement project, it's a elevated road.
It's a bridge removal.
Yes.
Removal.
So are we okay with moving those 4 items over? West Barton Bridge replacement, parking citywide strategy, and the Cycle 9 guardrail? Okay, great. And this is Public Works maintenance. The top priorities are traffic signals, street lighting, street, sidewalk, curb, parkways, and parks. Storm drain channel, cleaning that out, city facilities, city neighborhood lighting plan, street sign replacement program, and priority. So after we had our layoffs, the Public Works Director and the Community Development Director and myself sat down with maintenance, and we talked about, and we developed 3 really priorities. One was parks, the other, I believe, were street sign replacement program, and Mr. Weiss, can you help me with the third one? I think it was potholes. Okay. So if the council would like to, these are standard, they're there. We can move this list or take some off and push them back to the priority C, but really based on the staff that we have right now, it's parks, potholes, and street sign replacement.
Sounds all right to me.
Okay. Planning and Development Services priority project list, 1920, here we go. And Mr. Weiss is online with us.
Thank you, Mayor McNabo and council members. First of all, I just want to extend my appreciation for setting these priorities over the years. And a lot of the legwork, groundwork has already been done on a lot of these projects, but let me go through them and kind of give you an idea of where we are. The first two you can group together. Those would be the Greens Group, which is the 4.78 acres and amending the Barton Road specific plan. What has happened in the last couple of weeks, the purchase sales agreement was approved by council to be amended, and certain monies are being transferred over to get a head start on getting this plan done. And the first thing we'll do is amend the specific plan to consider hotels to go within there. The next project is Edwin Fuels, and great progress has been made on that. We should be getting a resubmittal on that next week. There is still some environmental challenges, but it's moving ahead quite nicely. The Gateway specific plan is going through, I would say about halfway through the environmental process. It had a bit of a pause, but now the notice of preparation will be sent out to all of the agencies and homeowners in the area to comment. And these comments can be incorporated into the draft environmental document that should be distributed later this year. Grocery outlet, as Mr. Duffy has alluded, that it's under operation. There was a chance that they were going to apply for an economic development grant for a pylon sign. That is probably not going to occur, but there is an opportunity along the corridor that possibly another group will apply for a sign within that, and it's a great incentive. Prop 68, that has now been concluded. We did quite well, but we didn't compete for the pool grant, but that one is, we recommend be dropped off. Taco Bell is moving along. There's been a few challenges through COVID, but we've had daily discussions with the developer, and we are quite confident that Taco Bell is proceeding on. Mr. TV and Video, that's the parking program. It's a challenging site. It's a great location, but it's only 16,000 square feet. Part of what we're doing is we are gathering and researching for what we consider a very intelligent parking program along the corridor. The project in the 40-acre green belt is also grouped with the CUP in the 40-acre green belt, and that's an AGIS project that is starting up again, and there's talk that they'd like to look at potentially redesigning it, bring it from 12 to 16 units, but we're still studying that. The Blue Mountain Trail grant, working through the state. We have a competitive grant. We are now finalizing some of the property dimensions and all that, and we're working daily with the state on that, and it's looking very good. The animal control ordinance has been done. That was concluded last, I believe it was September of 19. As is parking citation appeals, we have it under control, and it seems like it's going well. Right now, there hasn't been too many tickets because the street sweeping has been curbed until June 7th, but it is, it's basically that program has been being maintained well. The CUP, I mentioned that's grouped with the other one. The La Cadena single-family residential, all the entitlements are done and the house is being built, and so that should be dropped off too. Rec Center is done. We are still, getting CDBG grants for that, but that's another project that's been, been taken care of. National Logistics is also the pallet yard project, and that's getting started again, and we'll probably see something soon by midsummer. The Surgical Center has taken a pause right on Barton. The developer and owner, Dr. G, is possibly looking at downscaling the project, but we are working with him on this. Going over to the, do you have any questions on any of these projects before I go to the B side?
Councilmember Allen?
Thanks, Mr. White. I wasn't real clear when you were describing the 40-acre green belt. I didn't quite understand what you were saying about that. Can you please repeat it?
It's my apology. I was going rather fast. It's a project that was part of the redevelopment plan. It's a project that will span over the will span over the Gage Canal, and they've secured agreements to go over there, and now it's time to start getting into the specifics on the condition. of
No,
those
Mr. Wise, I think he's referencing projects in the 40-acre greenbelt. So there's two items there. There's one CUP in the 40-acre greenbelt, and then there's I believe the Patrick O'Brien project, and the other is the
Oh,
other.
my
one.
apologies. Okay, my apologies. We are, I was looking at the wrong slide, my apologies. Yeah, there is projects in the 40-acre greenbelt. One is they called it a container facility. It's in the middle of a public hearing process right now. So there will be a decision rendered sometime in the near future on that. And there are a couple of projects within there also. We have a development review has kind of occurred on this one, and we haven't heard much back on it, but also for a road striping type facility that would stripe freeways and things like that. So yeah, I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong slide. So any questions on any of these?
Councilmember Hussey.
And Mr. Wise, I'm looking at we got this weekly report on economic development, housing development, and the questions on the Taco Bell. And it says right here that the developers,
Sir?
is this not public information? Yeah. Okay. I just want to know everything's going good and stuff, so never mind, disregard.
Yeah, and so I can just add to that. So, as Mr. Wise said, there have been some, it's been some delays on the project, but we believe that we've been able to assist in the removing those barriers, and so we're hoping to see some action, and I will let you know how that progresses.
All right, well, Mr. I just want, let the public know that, I appreciate all the hard work you guys do, and there's a lot of red tape that goes on, a lot of dotting I's, crossing the T's, so when people ask questions, I just tell them, just be patient and stuff's coming, so, thank you.
All right.
For the B priorities, yes, thank you. The Housing Authority report is a priority. It's a plan that basically is going to provide opportunities and also using funding for specialized projects in the area. And as Mr. Duffy spoke about earlier, we are doing a request for qualifications to bring in a professional firm to be able to help us with this. There's a lot of technical information that's very time consuming, and also there's a lot of information that has to be documented. So we do need some help there.
So, Mr. Weiss, let me join in here and help with this one. This is my mistake. The zoning around schools, that is an item that the council has as a future report, a future agenda item that has not gone back to the council yet. And so we wouldn't have that on the party until it comes back to the council for discussion. The noticing policy was actually completed. We made that change.
Oh, the expansion of the
Yes,
noticing.
from 500 to 1,000 feet. And then we have, and Mr. Weiss, you can pick up on Barton Road streetscape.
Thank you, Mr. Duffy. Yes, both, I would group Barton Road streetscape and Michigan Street. These were part of what are known as active transportation grants, and they're well along in the process. There's been public meetings on this, and we're seeing some very nice plans being generated by the consultant on that. So this is going to dovetail nicely into some of the future plans for Michigan and Barton. Building and safety request for proposals. I think that's more of an ongoing type of effort that, because we have a small building department, we need certain specialized people to be able to assist us. One would be a part-time building official, and another is some part-time inspection, but we're picking up more and more of it within the staff who's gaining more and more expertise in that area. The housing element request for proposals, that has actually been concluded. We're getting to a different level of that, where we're going to commence the housing element in the near future. And I'll jump down, and actually I'll group that with, there's the safety element update and the housing element update. Those are both, whether they're A or B priorities, they're going to be done this year. We are going to take a contract to the council in the near future and commence the housing element. And there is a firm that we have selected, so we'll take it to you for your approval. Jumping back a little bit is the canal project, which I apologize, I confused with the green belt, but that is the project that spans over the Gage Canal for access, and some of the design considerations are being looked at again that could make it a more modern project in 2020, make it a more walkable project that actually complements that whole area.
So Mayor and Council, I just want to add for that canal project. And so what it is, I believe is it a 12-unit complex, Steve?
It's 12. It's shown as 12, but the developer is showing us a different plan where it could be up to 16 units.
Okay, and so the challenge with that particular project is it sits, it's on canal, but it sits back, really sits further back from the road. And so in order to access that property, you have to cross the Gage Canal. And so Riverside Public Utilities is saying, well, you can't do that unless you get an easement, and we're only going to give you a 10-year easement. And so the developer is saying, well, I can't really sell a house to people where they're going to, after 10 years, they can't have access. And so the city attorney and myself and Mr. French went and met with Riverside Public Utilities. And so our goal would be is that the city would get a 25-year easement that would continuously renew to have access. And so Aegis would build the road to our standards, and we'd have the easement in order to access. Our initial conversation with RPU was, well, our roads cross the Gage Canal all over. It crosses on Barton, it crosses on DeBerry, it crosses on Peak, it crosses all the time. And so, but they have this thing now where they have some concerns about crossing the canal. And so we're working with Aegis and RPU to be able to advance this development. Interesting enough, this property was actually owned by the city earlier, and we recently sold it to Aegis, and it had a time frame on it for him to develop it, or we could buy it back. And the delay is not because he's not willing to get the project done, but is gaining the access, to the property.
And we want him to build it, we don't want to buy it back.
Absolutely. All we're going to do is get the easement. He's going to build the road on it to our street standards, and then we're fine.
Thank you.
The next project is the Grand Terrace Road Aegis project. That's another project that they would like to do. They would like to get something that's possibly more of a senior housing, something even considering some modular housing that's very modern and with a density that's probably a little higher than the neighborhood, but not so high. So that project also has great potential, and we've been talking with them about that.
Is that on the west side?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And I think,
Yes.
Mr. Weiss, I think one of the actions that the council took, I believe there's some density in this particular area to allow us to meet our RHNA numbers at the time or something of that particular nature?
RHNA is continuing to be a challenge. We really need 20 units an acre to qualify for RHNA, both for that and the Lewis project. We're continuing to try to figure out innovative ways to encourage that. And also, we're talking to the state, to Housing and Community Development, if there is some different approaches to this too. So I think we're making progress on these projects. Yeah. Just also to mention on the housing element update, we're going to be going to council in a week or so, or the next council meeting, with what's called the LEAP LEAP grant that hopefully will pay for most of this update. And it's free money in the terms of you can apply for it. It's almost certain you will get approved for it. And we will use that to finance most of the housing element update. We also have another one called SB2 down in the lower side of the city where there's some form of some type of a transit hub that we're trying to promote down in the southern part of the city that will actually make sense once the specific plan goes into effect. So we're doing a lot of different things tied to trying to encourage different housing types.
Councilmember Allen?
Didn't Cage Park, Old Cage Park used to be in here somewhere, and is that not on our list of any priority anywhere?
No, I think it's in the back part of the packet and that other.
I read it somewhere, and I was trying to, but I didn't.
I think it's in here.
Cage Park, and maybe Mr. Duffy, you can help me on this, but my understanding is that that's the area for RSB2 grant, down in Main Street towards the Holton boundary.
You know, I think that one of the things that, I know that one of the aspects of Cage Park was the issue of zoning. And I know that that's listed in here as terms of, but it was one of the unvetted, it has to come back to the council to be able to address that issue. It was a future agenda item, and that we haven't brought it back
That's what
yet.
it was a future agenda.
Yeah, okay, that list at the end?
Well-
Yes.
Okay,
Well-
now I remember.
Well,
Yeah.
the list at the end are the
vetted.
vetted ones,
Yeah.
and
And this is an unvetted one, okay. And I just wanted to also ask real quick about the parking district idea that we have to resolve around the Mr. TV video area.
yes.
Is that parking district idea, does that look like it's going to be successful anytime soon?
Well, it's been done in many other cities.
I mean, for us.
It's just a matter of us getting the study done and completed. And the process would be for us to bring somebody in to do that study, to show how shared parking and how that works, where if you have a project, say Mr. TV Video, and they are required to have X number of parking stalls, and they don't have that. And so you have to develop a strategy where within a certain number of feet, you have to have the same ability to have parking, either shared parking on another property or even not necessarily adjacent, but in the general vicinity. So we have to bring that study back and have that parking district approved in order to move that forward.
Great, I would really support having that study done.
Yes.
So that we can get that area developed.
Absolutely, sir.
We have also, finding complementary uses to the Barton Road specific plan is also important too. We have had some interest in that site from a lot of like gas stations and things like that, which it's not big enough to support it. So, coming up with a creative idea for that corner would be very important.
And also,
Now to see-
also to
Oh, I'm
note
sorry.
too that, so the Van Buren project is complete, and they're selling the final number of homes. I think they have 5 left to sell. They were actually doing pretty well till COVID-19 put a stop to that. Crestwood is completely sold out, and Mr. French, is that correct?
Well, they're not completely, but but most of the units have been finalized.
Okay, so one of the things that was required is that they have to sell at least 80% of the homes in order, and they put the final cap on the street, and they've done that.
So the final cap's on the street.
Yes. And so, Mr. French, are you still there?
I am, yes, sir.
And so, do you know the number of homes that they've sold out of the 17?
No, sir. Well, it has to be beyond the final 20, because they have asked for the bond release on the improvements.
Right.
Mr. Weiss, do you know if they've received all
They've
the
sold-
occupancy?
I'm sorry. Yes, they've sold a majority of the homes. I don't have the exact number, but they're pretty close to being done.
Yeah, 'cause they put the
Okay.
final cap on, and they've asking for the deposits back, so that turned out to be a very nice project.
Yes.
And that, just to note too, that Crestwood also received, I believe, the Inland Empire Home Builder of the Year.
Nice.
Okay, and so with this list that we have here, let's see. All right, so those projects are gone, and our goal is the highlighted ones would move over. So, Mr. Weiss, did I miss anything that needs to move over to top priority?
Yes, sir. I would also move the housing element and safety element update over.
Okay.
And the noticing policy comes off, you said.
And the noticing
Noticing
policy comes
policy.
up. Okay, great.
And the housing element RFP comes off too.
Okay.
Councilmember Hussey.
We got the sign code on the C priority. I know we had a lot of business owners come in and that, and I know when we redid some of the sign codes with the real estate agents and stuff. Is this the same sign code for the business owners? I know we were reaching out, try to get with the chamber, to get with the business owners and see what we could work with on the city, if anything on that came about.
We had reached out, and about a year and a half ago, reached out, and we haven't really received any recent complaints about the sign code. I think that, and Mr. Weiss is pretty flexible in terms of interpreting and trying to make sure that we can support business as much as possible. I think, even the most recent Domino sign was put up. There had to be some negotiation and discussion about
Absolutely.
about that.
Every sign is a negotiation.
Yeah.
Did they put up the sign yet for grocery outlet? I don't.
Yes, they have, and that's one of the things we talked about in terms of corporate companies have a certain look and feel, and so when they submitted their information, they had all the signs that they wanted. But after we approved the project, we then said to them, "You got to do a sign program." And so I've talked to Mr. Weiss about that, and there's no reason why we can't get that all done in the original permitting process. And so they have all the signs that they wanted up: organic food, wine, all those things are up there, and it's very tastefully done, and they're very happy right now.
All right, thank you.
So we'll move those items over, and is there anything else the council would like to? And these are the vetted future council agenda items list. So these are the items that the council put on a future agenda item, heard the issue, and then directed staff to make this a priority this past year. So we had established the youth council and council week. We had that. Charging the San Bernardino County fire rent for COG fire station. We had that discussion, and so we were in a holding pattern because of FP5. Master plan for undergrounding of utilities, we just had the discussion earlier. Storm drain master plan. This item should come back to the council as a part of the Lewis project. They did a 3D module of our storm drain system. They brought in a consultant, and it showed the 100-year flood, where the water goes. And so one of the Gateway specific plan requirement is to help dewater Michigan. As you guys all know, water runs downhill. It catches speed when it gets to Mount Vernon. Then by the time it gets to Michigan, it's really flowing. So as part of the Gateway specific plan, the Lewis Group has to go back and maybe, I think, 100 or so feet on Van Buren to capture the water so it doesn't run onto Michigan. And same thing on Pico. And so, but a part of their storm drain modeling, we can use to help develop our storm drain plan that was actually started by the redevelopment agency funds about 10 years ago, but was never actually adopted. And so we'll be bringing that item forward, a storm drain master plan. In addition to that, we'll also come forward with a financing mechanism to get the storm drain in to help the entire city, in addition to the Gateway specific plan. Then we have the Code of Conduct legislation, the legislative body handbook, which the council appointed Councilperson Robles to be able to look at that issue for that committee. I know that we have a meeting scheduled next week with the city attorney, myself, and Councilperson Robles. We had stopped the bleed program. We worked with the fire department. We actually had a date ready to go, and COVID-19 stopped us from doing that. So we'll pick that up as soon as we can do that again. And then the other item, which still requires some, I think, some real detailed discussion in terms of a strategy for cannabis-related activities and licensing in the city. We did have the city attorney come in and provide some information on the various types of licensing that were available, and the council did make a statement that they wanted the item to come back at a certain period of time. And so all of those items are available to be pushed to the priority list and to have some further discussion with the council at this time. So as those items stand right now, based upon the council's discussion and a future agenda item, and then hearing it, those are all items that are going to be going on the top priority list. I'm sorry, yeah, on the top priority list.
Okay. Very good. Mayor Pro Tem Wilson.
I don't know about the rest of you, but I think we can push the cannabis someplace else. I'm not interested in licensing cannabis sales here, and I don't think our constituency is. So I think that's a waste of staff time.
To that, I would say, I think since we last discussed it, Riverside County has created an avenue for licensing, and there is set to be a cannabis retailer just about on our back doorstep on Central Avenue in Iowa area. And so if we have further discussion, it would be interesting to know what effect that would have on the desires of those that want to have a closer place to buy cannabis. But
Yeah.
I think the further discussion goes into us really examining all the different licensing options and what makes the most sense for our community.
Well, I'd certainly rather have the discussion and be prepared ahead of time than for it to catch us off guard.
Yeah.
Because I believe, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem about what he said about our constituency, but I don't wholly agree with it because I believe there's part of the constituency that does want it discussed because they're the ones who brought the issue up. We had a workshop in here a few weeks or months back, and it wasn't a workshop that any of us wanted. It was a workshop that residents wanted. Some residents had asked for. So maybe we do need to continue to keep that on the radar.
Excuse me.
Councilmember Robles.
I'm not advocating for or against. What I'm saying is we had a process. This was last year's priority workshop that 4 of us attended, and some people from the community came and spoke about it, and we agreed to do this. So we should continue down that path. And part of finding out if citizens want it or don't want it is going through the public vetting process.
Councilmember Hussey? All right. I understand what you're saying, Mayor Pro Tem. I don't know that it completely goes away, but I think we need to find a place to put it. As far as our reduction in staff, maybe it's not top priority, but high priority. And we figure out a way that it makes sense to move forward with it in a manner that's befitting the constituency.
Yeah. Well, Mayor, I'm bringing this back to you guys because you actually set a certain time. You said it would come back in 9 months, so that would be.
It was brought back in time for some people's reelection timeframe, and we agreed with it.
Okay. And
Well, actually, what the discussion turned to for me when we were first talking, or when we were talking about it last time, was how much money this would bring into the city. And I have to say that it may or may not. I've read pros and cons on that. And so to me, what that says is, based on the licensing, is there an opportunity? If we look at certain kinds of licensing, how does that make it harder for us to proceed? Certain kinds of licensing, how does it make it really actually more expensive for the city because of the setup that we need to have in place? And if there is money to be made, generally it's through a tax, which would have to go on the ballot. And so I think that if we were going to talk about any of those, we would have to have that discussion and determine whether it would go on the next ballot or not. And since it was revenue-based, it's around the time of the budget. Councilmember Hussey.
No, I agree with the, excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem, you know, I didn't want it, I don't want it in the city either, but we did do a vote on it to bring it back, like Councilman Robles said, to do future, to look at in the future, and then what the mayor just said, you know, what revenue base and everything. I know it's knocking on our back door. I know we heard from residents that want it and residents that don't want it. So I think, you know, it's, even though I don't want it, I still got to, you know, do what the residents say and what we voted on. So, you know, I'm here to help, you know, listen to what the advice is. And like Councilman Allen said, you know, we've got to be proactive on this just in case it does come and get us, and we have to see what's going to happen and what we can do and what we can't do instead of just having our doors wide open and then we're trying to take care of it later. So that's all I have, my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Allen.
Mr. Duffy, so I noticed on this list right here, we've already gone over and determined sort of the future of some of these items, when we might expect them, but one of them I'm looking at the Code of Conduct Legislative Body Handbook, and I'm kind of wondering when would that be coming back to us?
Well, as I said, Councilperson Robles and the city attorney and I will be meeting next week to kind of go over a strategy to bring something back to bring a recommendation back to the council. But Councilperson Robles wants to add more. I mean,
Well,
Councilmember Robles.
you know, you have a subcommittee of one.
Okay.
So you have to take, and it's an enormous task, and we have not been able to get a meeting of the administrators and meet together yet. But I would think, and see, then again, we have a pretty, I would think, depending on what the city manager's agenda plan is, you know, would it have to fit in, and I would say at least within, 3 or 4 meetings would be a good idea.
Well, I would really support seeing that as soon as possible. I think we need it. I really agree with you on it.
Yeah, and what I was hoping for was to at least, because it really needs group interaction, so I was hoping to bring a framework, and then we would work on it together.
All right.
okay, so so the next steps, what we'll do is we'll take the comments that we heard from the council today, we'll format that into a new priorities list for 2020-21, and then we'll bring it to the council just for confirmation, see that we didn't miss anything in the process.
All right.
Okay. With that, I'm available for any more questions.
Further questions? All right. Nice job. With that, we will adjourn to our next regular city council meeting to be held on Tuesday, June 9th, 2020 at 6 p.m. Thank you all.